The courtroom was uncharacteristically silent as the judge's gavel echoed through the chamber, delivering a verdict that shattered Officer Michael Carter's world. After 15 years of serving with distinction in the Brooklyn Police Department, the word guilty hung heavy in the air, marking the end of his career and the beginning of an undeserved sentence. The evidence that had convicted him was damning, but Michael knew it was fabricated. The betrayal of his own brothers in blue cut deeper than the bars he was soon to face. Near the back of the courtroom sat Luke, his German Shepherd partner and closest ally. Luke's sharp, intelligent eyes were fixed on Michael, his tail still as if sensing the gravity of the moment. For years, the duo had faced countless dangers together, their bond forged in the crucible of life-or-death situations. The thought of leaving Luke behind was unbearable. When the judge rose to leave, Michael's voice broke the oppressive silence. "Your Honor," he began, his voice trembling. "Before I'm taken away, I have one final request. Please, let me say goodbye to Luke." The request caught the courtroom by surprise. The judge hesitated, then nodded solemnly. 3 minutes, he said. As soon as Luke was released, the German Shepherd sprinted toward Michael, his claws clicking against the polished floor. Michael fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, buddy. I let you down." Luke whimpered, leaning into Michael's chest as though trying to comfort him. But then Luke's body tensed, his nose twitching against Michael's jacket. A sharp bark shattered the moment, drawing every gaze in the room. Luke tugged at Michael's jacket, his barks growing louder and more insistent. "What's he doing?" someone muttered. The judge frowned, gesturing for an officer to investigate. Michael froze as the officer searched his jacket. A metallic clink echoed in the courtroom as a small recording device fell to the floor. Luke barked again, standing alert. The room erupted into murmurs as the prosecutor paled, stumbling over his words. "This is irrelevant. It's not part of the evidence," he snapped. But the judge's piercing gaze silenced him. "Play it," he commanded. As the recorder crackled to life, a gruff voice filled the air. "Just plant the evidence, no one's going to question it. Carter's clean record makes him the perfect scapegoat. Get it done." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Michael's heart raced as recognition dawned. The voice belonged to Captain Royce Harding, his former supervisor, the very man he had once trusted with his life. The courtroom had descended into chaos. Lawyers whispered furiously. The prosecutor scrambled to salvage his case, and spectators exchanged wide-eyed glances. But Michael Carter only had eyes for Luke, his loyal German Shepherd who had just unearthed the truth that no one else had seen or wanted to see. "Luke," Michael whispered, gripping the dog's collar. His heart pounded with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Luke, as always, sat tall and proud, his sharp gaze scanning the room. It was as though the dog knew the gravity of what he had uncovered. Michael felt a flicker of something he hadn't dared to feel in weeks: vindication. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order in the court." His voice cut through the chaos, restoring a tenuous silence. "This recording changes everything," the judge declared. "The integrity of the evidence in this case is now in question." Turning to the defense lawyer, he said, "You have 48 hours to investigate the origins of this recording." As the bailiff approached to escort Michael back to holding, the officer hesitated. "Your Honor," he said cautiously, "can the dog stay with him? Luke seems integral to this case." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Granted. Luke remains with Officer Carter until the investigation concludes." Relief washed over Michael as he walked out of the courtroom with Luke by his side. The German Shepherd's presence was a lifeline, a reminder that he wasn't alone in the fight to clear his name. Back in the holding facility, Luke stayed close, his sharp instincts always on alert. The small, stark room felt less oppressive with Luke pacing its confines, his tail wagging softly each time Michael called his name. "I don't deserve you," Michael murmured, stroking Luke's sleek coat. "But I'll fight for both of us." Michael's thoughts raced as he pieced together the events that had led to his arrest. He replayed every interaction with Captain Royce Harding, the man behind the betrayal. Harding's voice on the recording had been unmistakable, his casual order to frame Michael a damning revelation. But Michael knew proving his innocence wouldn't be easy. Harding wasn't just a captain, he was connected, respected, and feared. As Michael wrestled with his thoughts, Luke suddenly perked up, his ears swiveling toward the door. A soft knock sounded, and a familiar face appeared, Detective Sarah Hayes, one of the few colleagues who had believed in Michael's innocence from the start. "I pulled some strings to get in here," Sarah said, her voice low. "The recording is real, and Harding's name is all over it, but he's already trying to bury it. If we don't move fast, this will disappear." Michael's jaw tightened. "What do we do?" Sarah glanced at Luke. "We follow the lead, and it looks like your partner here is better at sniffing out the truth than any of us. Do you remember where Harding might have hidden something incriminating? Luke might be able to track it." Michael nodded slowly. "There's a storage unit he always kept locked up tight. He wouldn't let anyone near it. If there's anything to find, it'll be there." Sarah's expression hardened with determination. "Let's go." Under the cover of night, Michael, Luke, and Detective Sarah Hayes drove through the empty streets of Brooklyn. The storage unit Michael had mentioned was tucked away in an industrial district, a sprawling maze of identical metal containers that rarely drew attention. Harding had always been careful, but Michael hoped Luke's sharp instincts would lead them to what they needed. The air was cold and damp as they arrived, their breaths visible in the dim glow of the streetlights. Sarah parked the car a block away, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of surveillance. "We have to be quick," she murmured, pulling her coat tight. "If Harding catches wind of this, we're done." Michael stepped out of the car, Luke trotting beside him, his tail held high and his posture alert. "You ready for this, buddy?" Michael asked, crouching to meet the German Shepherd's gaze. Luke let out a soft bark, as if to say, "Always." They moved cautiously, weaving between the rows of storage units. The metallic clang of their footsteps echoed in the stillness, heightening the tension. Michael's pulse quickened as they neared Harding's unit, a nondescript container with a heavy padlock. Luke stopped abruptly, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. He let out a low growl, his sharp eyes fixed on the door. "This is it," Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, pulling out a set of tools to pick the lock. She worked quickly, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Luke stayed close, his body tense as he scanned their surroundings. With a faint click, the lock gave way. Sarah glanced at Michael. "Ready?" He nodded, pushing the door open slowly. The air inside was stale, the faint scent of dust and metal filling his lungs. Michael clicked on a flashlight, the beam revealing rows of shelves stacked with unmarked boxes. "Start looking," Sarah said, her voice urgent. "Anything that ties Harding to the setup." Michael and Sarah began rifling through the boxes, their movements swift but careful. Luke moved through the space with purpose, his nose to the ground. Suddenly, he froze, his ears perking up as he barked sharply. Michael turned to see Luke pawing at a crate in the corner. "What's he found?" Sarah asked, hurrying over. Michael knelt beside Luke, prying open the crate with his flashlight tucked under his arm. Inside were stacks of files, a laptop, and several flash drives. Michael's breath caught as he pulled out a folder. The documents inside were detailed accounts of false evidence planted in multiple cases, his included. "This is it," Michael said, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and anger. "This is everything." Before they could celebrate, Luke growled again, this time louder. The hair on the back of Michael's neck stood up as he realized what the dog was warning them about. Footsteps echoed outside the unit, growing closer with each passing second. "Someone's coming," Sarah hissed, pulling her weapon. Michael grabbed the files and stuffed them into a bag, his heart racing. "Luke, stay close," he ordered, his voice firm. The German shepherd positioned himself protectively in front of them, his growl deepening as the footsteps stopped just outside the door. The silence was deafening. Then, with a sudden crash, the door was shoved open, revealing two men in dark clothing. They froze at the sight of Luke, whose bared teeth and commanding presence stopped them in their tracks. "You don't want to do this," Michael said, stepping forward with Luke at his side. The men exchanged glances, hesitating. Luke let out a sharp bark, the sound echoing like a warning. "Leave, now!" Michael growled, his voice cold. The intruders faltered, their confidence shaken by the German shepherd's unwavering stance. Without another word, they turned and fled into the night. Michael exhaled, his hands trembling as he looked down at Luke. "You saved us again," he murmured, running a hand over the dog's head. Luke wagged his tail once, his alert posture softening. "We need to go," Sarah urged, her voice cutting through the moment. "This is enough to bury Harding, but we have to get it to the DA before he makes a move." With the evidence in hand and Luke leading the way, the three of them slipped back into the shadows, ready to fight for the truth. The trio returned to Sarah's apartment, a small but secure space where they could review the evidence without fear of interference. The atmosphere was tense as Michael spread the files, laptop, and flash drives across the kitchen table. Luke sat at his feet, his watchful eyes scanning every movement, as if he understood the gravity of their mission. Sarah powered on the laptop, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. "If this has anything incriminating, it'll be here," she said, inserting one of the flash drives. The screen lit up with folders, each labeled with dates and case numbers. Michael leaned over her shoulder, his jaw tightening as he recognized several of the cases, his included. "There," he said, pointing to a folder titled Carter. Sarah opened it, revealing a series of documents and audio recordings. The evidence was damning. Emails, surveillance footage, and transcripts that detailed how Captain Harding had orchestrated the framing of multiple officers to cover his own illicit activities. "This isn't just about me," Michael murmured, his voice low. "He's been doing this for years, destroying lives, burying the truth." His hands balled into fists, anger simmering just below the surface. Luke nudged his leg gently, grounding him in the moment. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "This is enough to take him down, but we need to act fast. Harding has resources. We can't give him time to cover his tracks." Michael glanced at Luke, who was now pacing the room, his body tense. "He's always been one step ahead," Michael said, a note of doubt creeping into his voice. "What if—" A sudden sound interrupted him. Luke froze, his ears pricking up as he let out a low growl. Michael's heart pounded as he moved to the window, peering through the blinds. A black SUV idled on the street below, its engine humming softly. "They've found us," Sarah whispered, her face pale. She grabbed her phone, dialing quickly. "I'll call for backup." Michael turned to Luke, who was already at the door, his body poised for action. "Stay with me, buddy," he said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. He looked at Sarah. "We can't wait for backup. We have to protect the evidence." Sarah nodded, her determination returning. "There's a fire escape in the back. We'll use it to get out." Gathering the files and the laptop, they moved quickly but quietly, Luke leading the way. His every step was careful, his sharp eyes scanning for danger. The fire escape creaked under their weight, but they made it to the alley undetected. Once on the street, they ducked into a nearby parking garage, using the shadows for cover. The SUV cruised past slowly, its tinted windows hiding its occupants. Luke growled softly, his body pressed close to Michael's leg. "Good boy," Michael murmured, scratching behind his ears. "Stay sharp." Reaching Sarah's car, they loaded the evidence into the trunk. "We have to get to the DA's office," Sarah said, starting the engine. "It's the only safe place to turn this in." The drive was tense, every corner and intersection a potential ambush. But Luke remained steadfast, his gaze fixed on the road ahead as though willing them to succeed. When they finally arrived at the courthouse, Michael let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Inside, the DA greeted them with a mix of surprise and urgency. "You're taking a huge risk coming here," he said, ushering them into his office. "But if what you have is solid, Harding is finished." Michael placed the files on the desk, his expression resolute. "It's all here, everything he's done. It's time for the truth to come out." The DA nodded, already sifting through the documents. "We'll handle this. Stay out of sight for now. Harding won't go down without a fight." As they left the office, Michael felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Luke trotted beside him, his tail wagging slightly as though sensing his relief. "We're not done yet," Michael said, scratching Luke's head, "but we're closer." For the first time in weeks, Michael felt hope. With Luke by his side and the truth finally coming to light, he knew they could take on whatever came next. The morning air in Brooklyn carried a weight of anticipation as Michael, Sarah, and Luke sat in the small waiting area outside the DA's office. The evidence they had handed over the night before had been enough to secure an emergency hearing, and word had spread quickly. Michael's fate, and the unraveling of Captain Harding's corruption, rested on what would happen in the courtroom that day. Luke sat quietly at Michael's side, his posture calm yet alert. The German shepherd seemed to sense the importance of the moment, his intelligent eyes scanning the bustling corridor. Michael reached down to scratch behind his ears, drawing strength from the unwavering loyalty of his canine partner. "Whatever happens, I've got you," Michael whispered. Luke's tail thumped softly against the floor in response. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The DA began his presentation with the evidence Michael and Sarah had risked everything to retrieve. As each damning document and recording was presented, a hush fell over the room. The jury listened intently, their expressions growing graver with every revelation. Among the evidence was the recording Luke had uncovered in the courtroom weeks earlier. Hearing Captain Harding's voice admit to framing Michael sent a ripple of anger through the audience. Harding sat at the defense table, his once confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of the truth. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the DA said in his closing argument, "this case is about more than one man's wrongful conviction. It's about holding those in power accountable and ensuring that justice is truly blind. Officer Carter's loyalty to his duty and his community never wavered, even in the face of betrayal. That loyalty was matched only by his partner, Luke, whose instincts and bravery brought the truth to light. Michael's eyes watered as he glanced at Luke, who was lying calmly at his feet. The dog had done more than just save his career. He had saved his faith in justice and loyalty. Later that afternoon, the verdict came quickly. The jury found Michael not guilty, and Captain Harding was arrested on multiple charges, including corruption and obstruction of justice. The courtroom erupted in applause as Michael was declared a free man, his name cleared at last. Luke barked excitedly, breaking his calm demeanor for the first time. Michael knelt beside him, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. "We did it, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We finally did it." As Michael and Luke stepped outside, they were met with a sea of applause from fellow officers, neighbors, and strangers who had followed their story. Sarah stood nearby, her face lit with pride as she clapped along with the crowd. This powerful story of loyalty, bravery, and justice reminds us that the truth can prevail even in the darkest times. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your stories of resilience and hope.